All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for taking a few minutes to join us today for What's in Your Turf Matters Part 2, INFILLosophy. As was the case in Part 1 of this webinar series, we'll be utilizing the polling feature throughout today's presentation. So we'll note when to be on the lookout for a poll, but please keep your eyes peeled. Additionally, we'll do our best to answer questions along the way, and we'll have a few minutes at the end as well just to tackle any additional questions that come up. But if a question or thought arises, please don't hesitate to just send them through via the chat section. You will probably best be served to send it directly to me, Stephen Torbeck. And we'll go ahead and get our first poll rolling now. So in just a second, you'll see a poll pop up asking what time zone you're in. So if you can just take a second and select which time zone you're in. All right, looks like most of us are on the Eastern time zone, several Central, several Pacific, and a couple of Mountain. So we've got a pretty good collection of people here today. So now that we know a little bit more about who's on the call today, hold on one second here. Sorry, slight technical difficulty. So now that we know a little bit more about who's on the call today, let's tell you all a little bit more about us. My name is Stephen Torbeck, and I'm the Sports System Consultant here at US Green Tech. My role is to be an expert in bringing together turf, infill, and shock pads in order to help individuals and groups like those that are on this call dial in the synthetic systems to best suit their needs. I've been with US Green Tech for the better part of the past year, and I previously worked in sports media and advertising. With me today is Adam Coleman. Adam?
Hey, thanks, Stephen. Again, my name is Adam Coleman, and I come to you with over 13 years of experience in the synthetic turf industry. The first 7 years of my career was spent as a civil engineer designing sports facility projects. In the last 6 years, I've worked for a field construction firm here in Ohio where I've helped launch Turf Reclamation Solutions, which is a business unit that focuses on the removal and recycling of old turf fields. And the second unit, US Green Tech, a products group that focuses on alternative infills. So over the past years, I've sat on various sides of the table that really have given me a unique understanding of the design all the way through the construction. So just to recap, the intent of today's webinar is to share as much in-depth information about the 6 major alternative infills that are available on the market today. And we'll touch on a few others, but primarily we want to focus on crumb rubber, virgin rubber, organics, and coated sand. We know there's a lot of information out there, and we're hoping the next hour will help clarify how these infills stack up to one another. All right, so we're going to launch our second poll. And based on what you know today, or maybe what you don't know today, if you had to pick 2 infills to consider for a project, which ones would you pick? Hang with us while we launch this poll.
All right. So we've got a wide variety of answers here, for sure. All right.
All right, so in just a few minutes, I'm going to take you through the 14 factors and considerations for each infill. And before doing so, let's recap just why we're doing this.
So admittedly, we understand that many have joined today's call to better understand the safety of crumb rubber. And while there's a great deal to be learned about that particular infill still, we see recent events as an opportunity to take a step back, realize that one size does not fit all, and design more customized solutions for field owners that better meet their specific needs. By the end of today's presentation, we hope that you'll see each infill, crumb rubber included, has its attributes and value to the market, but each may also have some drawbacks and some considerations to keep in mind. In part 1 of this webinar series, The Modern Synthetic System, we took the audience through the components that make up a padded alternative system. If you missed that webinar, please shoot us an email and we can forward a link for your review. I'll put my email address into the chat window at the end of today's presentation so you can do so. So a traditional system consists of about a 2 1/4 inch turf infilled with a combination of sand and crumb rubber over a crushed rock base. The modern system, by comparison, is designed to allow for each component of the system to excel at what it was designed to do. So as you'll see, we're still in the neighborhood of 2¼ inches. The modern system, though, is going to consist of a shorter pile height turf, infilled with an alternative infill, and installed over a shock absorption pad laid over crushed rock. So in the early 2000s, when the chrome rubber infilled systems became prevalent, field owners were solving for things like having a field that could withstand more use, having more reliable, consistent playing surfaces, reduction in costs, time to maintain, reduction in water usage, and again, the upfront costs associated with a new synthetic field. If you flash forward to today, field owners have become a little bit more savvy and knowledgeable about the pros and cons of synthetic turf, and they're trying to solve for a whole new set of challenges, including, but by no means limited to, surface heat, reducing concussions and head injuries, building a sustainable system, reducing chemical exposure, and of course, upfront costs and now life cycle costs come to the forefront as well. The infill market is growing rapidly, and that's probably an understatement, in an effort to address these new challenges and concerns. And in our travels, and when I say our, I mean Adam and I, we've seen a pretty significant gap in understanding of how these infills all perform and all these different characteristics that make up a new system. So over the next 25 minutes or so, we'll take you through each infill one by one. We encourage you to follow along with your infill sample tower, and once we have covered each infill individually, we'll then compare all 6 of the major categories with some visuals. We will be as objective as possible. Admittedly, we do have an intimate knowledge of the coated sand category. Our flagship product, of course, is Infill. So, just help us stay honest along the way. Adam?
All right, this will be more technical than our first presentation, but certainly not intended to be all-inclusive. There's an infinite amount of tests and things that could probably support each variable to the infill, pad, and turf system, but we're going to try to cut through that clutter and kind of boil it down for you. The overall intention is to provide further insight into the materials and help provide some guide rails or some guidance as to what may be the best for your unique challenges and considerations. So we sent out an infill tower to all those who registered before yesterday. We really felt that it'd be more effective if you could experience the products while we were talking about them. So it's one thing to kind of talk about it conceptually, but I think it's another thing to put the products in your hands, experience them for yourself, and kind of draw your own conclusions along with ours. So we'll start with the bottom of the tower and work our way up. We welcome you to open the tower and follow along. You can take the product out, put it in your hands, kind of roll between your palms and kind of experience it as an athlete might on the field. All right, so as we review each of these products, and this is what the criteria will entail. So surface heat, so understanding how the infill can assist in making the surface less hot. Chrome rubber will always be our benchmark that we're trying to improve on, and all these infills will produce some heat benefit, cooling benefit over a chrome rubber system. Within sustainability, we'll explore 3 areas: where in the world the product is sourced, how it's manufactured, and how it's dealt with at the end of the field's life. Now, cost is a little bit challenging, right? I'm sure it's one that everybody's interested in, but it's challenging to compare because the properties of the product are so different. A pound of rubber is cheaper than, say, a pound of cork. However, it's like one of the questions I asked my 6-year-old, what's heavier, a pound of feathers or a pound of bricks? And of course, we all know the answer, but understanding the properties of the products makes you understand that answer in much better detail. There are also other properties that should be considered, like life cycle costs and maintenance, to get a holistic picture of what the product cost is. So life cycle cost is a newer topic and one that we've seen come up in the last couple of years as the number of field replacements has really increased. So as the market matures and owners live with their synthetic turf fields for longer, they realize that there's an ongoing cost associated with the fields. And it's not to say that they didn't realize this when the field was installed, say, 10 years ago, but at that time they're only focused on their new field, and 10 years seems pretty far away and frankly someone else's problem. But when it comes time for replacing the field and raising those funds again, it's good to know that your future costs can be reduced if you select the right products from the onset. From a maintenance standpoint, you're going to want to know, hey, what's it going to take for my facilities team to keep this field functioning at the optimum level? And while these are by no means a no maintenance field, different infills will certainly require different levels of input. Bulk density is pretty straightforward, but it's a characteristic that will be indicative of, say, how much mass is required to take up a specific volume. And today we'll refer to this as pounds per cubic foot rather than any metric units. Within mixture, we'll look at, can this product be used by itself, or does it require another product within the system? Next up, we'll look at floating, and you ask maybe why is this important? Sometimes during heavy rains, there's a delay between the intense rainfall and when the water can actually, work itself through the system. These systems are designed to pass a significant amount of water, but at times there can be a delay, especially during a deluge. So if an infill that is used that can float or be carried by water, that delay can cause some of the product to move around the field. We'll cover which of these infills requires or recommends or makes the pad optional. And then within warranty, we'll talk about how this relates to the life cycle cost. It's important to understand which products can withstand the amount of play and the 24/7 external environment for the life of the field. Now, I do want to clarify, this could get a bit confusing, but there are product warranties which are different than system warranties, which are different than workmanship warranties. Product warranties, they're typically extended by the infill manufacturer and are in addition to the system warranty that's provided by the turf contractor. So the contractor is the one that's bringing all these components together. And then, of course, there are workmanship warranties that cover the actual construction of the field, including things like base and drainage and seams and inlays. Fire resistance is important, especially for any indoor application, to ensure that you're going to use a product that's going to pass fire code. Next up is relative abrasiveness. And while there are ASTM and FIFA tests that are available to look at the abrasiveness of the entire system as it relates to the athlete, for the simplicity of today, we're going to examine each infill on its own and a slightly subjective basis. So we're going to look at these products and invite you to do the same. So kind of open it up. If you press between your palms, you can kind of experience how abrasive this might be to an athlete. UV stability indicates how well a product holds up to ultraviolet exposure, which can certainly wreak havoc on all certain types of products. And lastly, we'll cover sourcing and origin. So we'll note if the infill is domestically or internationally sourced. And for the record, we're considering Canada as domestic today. All right, so we're going to just launch a quick poll here and just kind of assess this criteria and let us know which you are most interested in. And they can answer up to 3. Up to 3.
We'll give everybody just another minute or two, but it certainly appears that upfront costs, life cycle costs, and maintenance are rising to the top. Interestingly, all of the criteria that we've mentioned have been selected at least once, so all very important items.
So there are 4 major categories that were covered today, and then a 5th category of infills that don't really meet the criteria or fit as neatly into the other 4 categories. Then we'll close, as Stephen mentioned, with charts that will boil all this information down and kind of give it to you in some easy to read charts. All right, first up is a product that we're all familiar with, and that's crumb rubber. So it's been widely used for the past 18 or so years, and frankly, designers are really comfortable using it and specifying it. And while the performance might not always be ideal, it's known and somewhat predictable. So designers, at this point, they know the turf height, the density required, the amount of rubber and sand that they should specify, and they also know the range of cost for the product. So it's fairly easy to predict the budget and how the bids might come in. But as you know, this product has come under intense scrutiny because it's been surmised that one or several of the 96 chemicals in crumb rubber might be carcinogenic to young athletes. And while that's a serious issue, we're not here to take a side, but rather open the possibility of incorporating one of the other many great infill products that are available on the market today, and just kind of expand the thinking beyond crumb rubber. Many of the products that we'll cover today are virgin or organic, and thus the contents can be controlled and any concerns eliminated. So we'll take a closer look at crumb rubber and the different criteria that we outlined. So rubber has the disadvantage of being a dark color, which attracts and retains the most amount of heat. The system that contains crumb rubber is more often than not going to be the hottest of the systems. Now I should qualify that rubber is not the only contributor of the heat here. The fiber, and specifically the type of turf fiber, so slit or monofilament, will have an effect on the surface temperature. Crumb rubber does utilize a waste stream product, so it certainly gets points there, and at least for a short time keeps that out of the landfill. It does have some inherent end-of-life challenges, which we'll cover in just a few minutes. Rubber is one of the cheapest infill products available, which has been one of its redeeming qualities despite some of the drawbacks. So the life cycle cost we've noted as being low. When it comes to replace a field with crumb rubber, it is possible to reuse the infill, and I'm drawing on my experience from the turf reclamation solution side, where we've removed over 100 fields across the country. And I've seen in about 1 in 4 cases that someone will take the opportunity to reuse the crumb rubber and sand mix. But you need to be really careful and cautious as you do that, and I'm going to outline just a couple things to consider. So what was the original mix? Did the contractor put in what was originally specified? And was that mix amended over the past 10 years? So it's not uncommon for folks to put in like extra rubber to make the system soft in the later years. Consideration number 2, will the new turf contractor accept and use this mix as their own and warranty the system for another 8 years? So to kind of build it out a little bit for you, say turf contractor A originally built your field, and you want to replace it and make it a competitive bid. However, turf contractor B and C aren't comfortable reusing turf contractor A's infill mix. That can really kind of muddy things up on bid day because you're forcing the contractor to do something he's not comfortable doing. My recommendation as a former designer is to go ahead and base bid everything new and then allow there to be like a deduct for reusing some or all of that existing infill material. The third point, has the infill been exposed to organics, say leaves and grass and things blown onto the field, flooding or silt that might compromise the infill and make it very difficult to clean. And lastly, is the rubber a high quality rubber? So there's been a significant improvement in the quality of rubber over the years. In fact, the crumb rubber today is 99.9% crumb rubber and void of any fiber or steel from the tire. But certainly if the rubber is of poor quality, we don't want to bring that forward into our new field. So no surprise, crumb rubber fields require regular grooming with a drag behind brush. I'm sure many of you existing field owners out there understand what that takes. An annual deep cleaning is recommended just to remove that extra layer of dirt and debris and metal material that builds up on the field. And of course, heavily used areas such as goal mouths and soccer, or lacrosse creases rather, will see displacement that must be addressed by topping off the areas with more material. Over time, it's been found that sand and crumb rubber systems compact and get increasingly more firm and oftentimes need a decompaction. Now, if you look at the crumb rubber in the infill tower, you'll see that the product is very angular. So at the beginning, this creates a really resilient system, but over time, that angularity really starts to compact and consolidate in the system. The bulk density is around 35 pounds per cubic foot, and it's most commonly used with a raw subangular sand. It doesn't float, and I'll invite you to take a glass of water and drop these infill products into it, maybe just a little bit at a time, and kind of experience the will it float exercise for yourself. Interestingly, for crumb rubber, you'll see that some of the particles do stay on top of the water and will do so for a good amount of time. And that has to do with the air that's trapped within the particle and some of the surface area characteristics of crumb rubber. But over time, and given enough time, that product will fall to the bottom. So rubber systems have been most commonly installed without pads. However, we're learning, the industry is learning that fields perform much better over time and within the ideal performance range if a pad is installed. So that's really the reason for the asterisk here. We're really seeing a market shift toward pads being a standard in bidding situations. There is no product warranty associated with this product. It's not fire resistant. And if you pick up the crumb rubber, you'll notice that it's angular but still very resilient, so it falls into the non-abrasive category. Crumb rubber's worst enemy is UV radiation, and this will break down rubber over time, however. I will note that most of the rubber in a synthetic turf system never really sees the light of day because it's either buried in the infill profile or it's covered by turf fibers. Another great positive for rubber is that it's regionally available, meaning sourcing and shipping are quite predictable. There's probably 10 facilities across the U.S. and in all the major metropolitan areas where crumb rubber can be sourced. So the next category is virgin rubber, and these of course play very similar to crumb rubber systems. So if an owner is looking for similar playability, they have the choice of two types of virgin rubber, EPDM and TPE. The distinct advantage of these products over crumb rubber is that they are virgin, so they can be made up of known components which can be modified to avoid specific chemicals. Virgin rubbers can be put in the same tall pile height as crumb rubber. However, because of the cost, one approach is to lower the pile height and add a pad. So EPDM is most commonly known as track rubber, and it comes in a wide range of colors. And you'll see by the gray sample in your tower, its shape is irregular, just like crumb rubber. So the lighter EPDM colors can be used to reduce the surface temperature and reflect more of the sun's energy. I think it's important to clarify that while some heat benefit can be gained by this product and some of the other products that we're going to list today, it's by no means a quote-unquote cool solution. We think a more accurate description is less hot, and you'll hear us use that term throughout today's presentation. So to build on that a little bit more, if it's 95 to 100 degrees outside, your synthetic turf with crumb rubber could be somewhere around 170 degrees. Now, if one of these products lowers your temperature by 20, 30, 40 degrees, that's great, but you're still dealing with a surface that's anywhere from 130 to 150 degrees. So I think the best description here is less hot. EPDM is not recyclable. It is a chemically set product that can't be reversed. The cost of EPDM is somewhere in between crumb rubber and TPE. And it should be noted that not all EPDMs are created equal. So granules based on EPDM actually only contain about 20 to 25% EPDM rubber. The rest consists of things like chalk, processing oil, UV stabilizers, antioxidants, pigments, and other vulcanization materials. So the quality can really vary wildly between the manufacturers and from product to product. So as a specifier, really need to do your due diligence and specify the right EPDM for the application. So the life cycle cost, it's neither recyclable or reusable. It must be thrown away at the end of the field's life. So for that reason, we've given it high life cycle cost. Maintenance is really similar to crumb rubber, so just make sure you're doing your regular grooming and topping off heavily used areas. Bulk density is about 25 pounds per cubic foot, but can vary with the manufacturer. Just like crumb rubber, it's always used with a subangular sand. And again, some of it will float due to the surface area and trapped air, but the specific gravity is greater than 1, so it will sink over time. While EPDM does provide resiliency, we see it mostly installed with a pad. The warranty range, depending on manufacturer, is between 8 and 10 years. And it can be made fire resistant with additives. Just like the chrome rubber, it is an angular rubber product, but still very resilient. So we'll give it a, we'll put it into the non-abrasive category. UV stability, we note that it's somewhat stable, just because we know that UV can really wreak havoc on rubber products in direct sunlight. And it's available both domestically and internationally. All right, so next up is TPE, and it's very similar to EPDM with a couple exceptions. For one, you'll see by the image on the screen and the product in your tower that it's very uniform in shape. Another exception is that it is thermally set, not chemically set. And I know Stephen mentioned this analogy in the last webinar, but I think it's worth repeating because we get a lot of questions about what the difference is between these products, and this is the best way, I think, to keep it straight, at least in my mind. So if you think about asphalt, like TPE, being a thermally set product, and the components are able to be separated once heat is reapplied. But concrete, like EPDM, is chemically set and cannot be reversed. So in much the same way, TPE is recyclable, but also susceptible to softening during high heat if the right solar radiation zone product is not selected. All right, so let's get into the details here. Just like EPDM, the lighter colors, so most commonly light green and tan, can help reduce the surface temperature by reflecting the sun's energy. We put somewhat sustainable, so we did identify that it is recyclable. However, there's a difference between theoretically recycling it and actually logistically going through the process of recycling it. So the challenge here is removing it from the sand ballast. So the particle sizes are really similar between TPE and sand, and they really only differ in their bulk density. So in order to recycle the TPE, it would need to be processed to remove the sand and separate the sand out. And as of now, we know of no such process that can do so on site. So that's why this one is going to be somewhat sustainable until the technology can catch up to it. Of all the virgin rubber materials, TPE is the most costly. As with EPDM, it's important to select high-quality producers who understand how a product in this application should be produced. And TPE is not reusable for multiple turf life cycles. Therefore, new TPE would need to be purchased when a field is replaced, thereby giving it a high life cycle cost. Similar to EPDM and crumb rubber, regular grooming and topping off in heavily used areas is required. Bulk density is around 50 pounds a cubic foot, and again, will vary by the manufacturer. Like all the other rubbers, it's almost always used to a subangular sand. And to elaborate on that a little bit, the sand is used as a ballast. You need a certain amount of weight on that sports system to hold it down so it doesn't, say, wrinkle when you have a big lineman cutting, or move with expansion and contraction with the temperature. This product doesn't float, and a pad is recommended. So while TPE does provide resiliency, a pad is often installed. So usually for near the same cost as an additional pound of TPE, one can install a pad. So we see a lot of field owners go ahead and opting for the pad, which can be used for multiple life cycles. It's more of a long-term investment. And then they shrink down the pile height to maybe 1.5 inches or 1.75 inches in order to use less TPE. The warranty ranges from 8 years for hot climates up to 10 years in cold climates. Like EPDM, fire resistance is available with additives. And if you pick up the TPE, you'll notice that the granules are quite consistent and resilient. As compared to the EPDM, the TPE will compact less because of the consistent shape of the product. And later in the presentation, Stephen will kind of show you a chart that will show you the abrasion, relative abrasion of all these products. UV stability, we put somewhat stable or kind of a medium rating because you really need to be cautious where you're using these products and what solar radiation zone you're in. And this product is available both domestically and internationally.
So Adam, before we jump on to the next slide, we had a question come through asking if TPEs will all melt. I'll let you answer that one.
Let's go to this next slide, actually. That's a good segue. This is a map of the solar radiation zones across the world. And for those of you that have been in the industry for a while, or maybe even on the West Coast, you might be aware of some catastrophic failures in Los Angeles, but with a handful of TPE fields. And what happened there was a product was selected that wasn't able to withstand the solar radiation zone. And if you look at the West Coast of the U.S. on this map, you'll see that, you know, LA might fall within that sort of green or orange zone. So my guess is that they chose the less expensive product that wasn't, and didn't take the more conservative route of going with the one that's going to be more resilient in that environment. Mm-hmm. So they certainly won't all melt, but if you select the right TPE, it will, you know, hold up in that environment. It's just really important to understand that not all TPEs are created equal.
Great.
So organic infills are kind of following the same trend as organic fruits and vegetables, organic cotton clothing, organic cleaning products. So all these things have attracted a lot of attention in the last few years as our world seeks to get, excuse me, back to natural products. So the thought with organic infill is that, you know, sort of the you can't beat her, join her, Mother Nature type of approach. And the desire here is to avoid chemicals and other synthetic additives altogether. So we're going to cover two categories of organics, coconut and cork. So one of the products that's been around for quite some time actually is coconut. It's been around since about 2004 and is a blend of cork granules and coconut fiber. Both of these products degrade really slowly, and sometimes they're actually joined up with another product like rice husk. So coconut is really good at retaining moisture and releasing it over time through evaporation, and this mimics Mother Nature's cooling capability of natural grass. However, unlike natural grass, which can bring moisture from the soil below through the root zone and then release it into the air, organic infill must be regularly wetted to activate the cooling process. So this is challenging for arid climates which don't have regular rainfall. As a result, if these products do get installed in dry climates, then you have to add a watering system to your field. And this can be either a permanent system, like I've seen like an 8-head, 4-zone type of system, or a temporary system like a large hose wheel. So either way, it's going to require a lot more management to maintain ideal conditions, which is about plus or minus 50% moisture content. It's going to require a lot more management than other infill products. So it's really important that your maintenance staff and team is prepared adequately and trained to be actively involved in managing this type of system. So cork and coconut are both renewable resources. I think it's interesting that the cork tree is harvested every about 9 to 12 years, depending on the conditions, while coconut trees are harvested year-round. So there's no season. They just continually put out coconuts. So if we look at the LEED definition, a rapidly renewable product is one that has a harvest cycle under 10 years. So both of these qualify, although cork is right on the edge, depending on the conditions. So at the end of the field's life, this product can be reclaimed, composted, or even mixed with topsoil, which is a significant advantage over taking it to the landfill. So in addition to the product cost, 2 pounds of the coconut blend with 3 pounds of sand, the field owner should also consider the regular top-off of the field, irrigation, and active management over the field's life. So the active maintenance is required, as mentioned, to ensure that optimum moisture content is maintained. Also, the material has a tendency to move or float in heavy rainfall. So I would plan for some regrooming and redistribution of material, especially in the high-use zones. So settling and degradation does occur over time, so periodic application of new material must be taken into account. And usually when the field is installed, they'll provide the owner with some, call it attic stock, that they can use over the years to address those areas that may be that may need attention. The bulk density is about 10 pounds a cubic foot, but it really depends on the blend between the coconut and the cork. Because of their light bulk density, pretty much all organics will use some sort of sand ballast. So this product is designed to absorb and release water. So if you put these products in water, you'll see that the cork stays on the surface, as does the coconut, until the coconut absorbs the water, and then it will fall to the bottom. But that cork will remain on the top for a long period of time. A pad is recommended, so while the cork does provide you some resiliency, the pad ensures that you have consistent resiliency over the entire field. This product does not have a warranty. Cork by itself is fire resistant, but the coconut fibers itself are not. It's not abrasive. When you pick it up in the sample tower there, you can see that it's actually quite soft. And again, like the other organics, this product will break down with extended UV exposure. The sourcing of both of these products is international. Cork primarily comes from the Mediterranean region. Actually, 50% of the world's source of cork comes from Portugal. And the other regions include like South France, South Spain, Italy, and some in Northern Africa. Now, the coconut portion of it actually is sourced in Asia. So Sri Lanka and India are one of the biggest providers of coconut fiber.
So if I can stop you real quick, Adam. So one real quick, just kind of housekeeping item I'll throw out there again. Make sure you all are sending any questions to Stephen and not to Adam. So long story short, we're using a couple of different computers, one for the presentation and one for making sure we get questions answered. So we've had a couple come through here, so not to go back too far, but some TPEs claim that they are reusable. Can you speak more to that, Adam?
I guess it would come down to the manufacturer backing it up. So what we have seen is that TPEs have a warranty of 8 to 10 years, which tells me that that's the expected product life of that particular TPE. So I haven't seen any that are going to go out, 16 or 20 years that would give you confidence to be able to reuse the product. Not to say that it doesn't exist, but I'm certainly not aware of it.
Okay. A couple more around coconut. So how does the amount of water required for a cork field or a coconut field compare to natural grass? And kind of a follow-up to that is what happens if you do not water the coconut?
So the first one, I think the answer there is it depends. So, here in the Midwest where we get regular rain throughout the summertime, you certainly wouldn't need to introduce as much water as you would if you were in the South or Southwest in the summertime. If you're in a really humid climate, you might have to even provide less. So I'm not quite sure. It's kind of a case-by-case basis. And the second question?
And the second question was, what happens if you do not water coconut?
If you don't water it, it'll dry out. It can kind of blow around a lot more easily. It's one of the products that you definitely want to keep it in that ideal moisture content so it doesn't break down faster.
We're having a few folks have pointed out that some of the organics do in fact have 8-year warranties. Now that you mentioned that, I believe that's probably true. I know some of the requirements that we've seen in order to keep a warranty on an organic product can be pretty stringent, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of consistency with the warranties, but that's definitely something we'll look into a little bit further. And then the last question on coconut is, what happens if the coconut freezes? Because it's going to hold moisture, so what happens if it freezes?
Well, the cork itself does not absorb water, but the coconut portion of it is designed to hold moisture. So certainly if you're in a northern climate that, I guess, wanted to play sports in excuse me, in the freezing temperatures, there is a risk that this product would stay frozen.
Okay. I think that's all we have for right now.
So another option for an organic system is using cork strictly by itself. Cork does not absorb water, one of the great reasons it's used as a wine cork. But it is compressible and recoverable. So just a few quick facts about the cork tree. It's first harvested at age 20, and then every 9 to 12 years until it reaches about 200 years of age, and then it's no longer productive. Its peak harvest is around year 80 when it produces about 440 pounds per tree. So the primary reason to use cork on your field is to reduce surface temperature. So cork absorbs a lot less solar radiation than chrome rubber, but because it doesn't absorb, it does not cool through evaporative cooling like a coconut product would. Cork is a renewable resource, and like I mentioned, it's right on the edge of being defined as a rapidly renewable resource, but we might just be splitting hairs there. And it must be sourced from the place that it's grown, which is the Southern European region. So the cost per pound is the highest of the infill options we'll cover today, but again, it needs less poundage to take up the same amount of volume as the other products. Life cycle cost, field owners should account for migration of the material. It's naturally non-static, so it won't stick to your clothing. However, wind motion and water will really cause this product to move around the field. And I'll invite you to open up your infill tower there, and you'll just see how drastically light this product is. So again, this product will need active maintenance to ensure that there's even distribution across the field. So the material does have a tendency to float or move in heavy rainfall. And periodic application of new material should be taken into account. And some of that can be done by facility personnel, and some of it has to be outsourced to a contractor who's either got special equipment or knows how to analyze and re-infill the system. The bulk density is the lowest of any of the infills covered today, so it will take up the most amount of volume per pound. It can be used as a top dressing over top of, say, a crumb rubber field, but when used by itself, it's primarily used with a subangular sand. It does float. Interestingly, it is fire resistant. And from an abrasive standpoint, it is the least abrasive of all these products. It's really quite soft. Like other natural products, it will break down with exposure, and we covered the sourcing is in that Mediterranean region.
We did have 2 more questions come through while you were working through cork. So is there a testing protocol for agricultural products regarding pesticides, agricultural or organics?
That's a good question, because we certainly don't want to trade, one concern for another. The one that I would lean on or refer to is the Synthetic Turf Council Infill guidelines. So in 2015, STC is an industry group that really helps support the industry and help guide the industry. They developed a list of guidelines and testing protocol that can be used for any type of infill.
Okay, and just circling back on the question about the warranties, it definitely looks like 2 of the larger, I guess, cork and nut producers do have an 8-year warranty. So again, we ask you to keep us honest. You guys are doing that. We'll take a look at that and update for the next presentation. Thank you.
Great.
And so I'm actually going to take over here for just a second and take us through the coated sand category. So again, as mentioned at the onset, we do manufacture a coated sand product called Infill, but I hope that we've shown our objective approach to alternative infills, and the same is going to hold true for this category. Our thinking is that there's not one product that is right for every customer situation, and there are a lot of new products on the market that haven't been fully vetted. Infill has been produced in Texas since 2005, so its properties and performance are well known and documented. It's based on a round sand core, which is coated with a very durable acrylic polymer. So in terms of surface heat, as Adam noted, I would describe this as less hot. Infill is shown to be about 25 to 30 degrees cooler than crumb rubber, and that's due to its lighter color and ability to reflect the sun's energy. This product has 2 sustainable advantages. So the size of the round sand used for Infill is a byproduct of the mining process, and the product has a unique advantage of being completely reusable for multiple life cycles. And after 2 life cycles, it can actually be returned to the production facility for reprocessing. This allows it to completely avoid going to the landfill. In terms of upfront cost, it's similar to the cost per pound of crumb rubber, although it has one of the, I should say, the highest bulk density of the alternative infills. We recommend about 6 pounds per square foot. Life cycle cost, because the product is installed homogenously, it can easily be reclaimed and reused into the next life cycle of turf with no drop in performance. Maintenance is low. Of all the products listed today, this requires the least amount of maintenance. The heavy bulk density of the product keeps it in place. It does not compact over time, and you won't experience significant migration. Bulk density, 110 pounds per cubic foot. It's the only alternative infill that can be installed homogenously. Its coating repels water, and it does not float. A pad is required, so this is going to be one of the more firm products or one of the more firm systems, so a pad will be required. Has a 16-year product warranty. It is fire resistant. And Infill is going to be more abrasive than the other infills we're talking about today. As is the case with all infill, abrasion becomes less of a concern as the turf fibers begin to fibrillate. Coated sand is very stable in an external environment. And finally, it is sourced domestically. It's made in Texas. So I'm going to turn it back to Adam, who's going to take us through the final category, which we'll call, again, other infills.
All right, so in addition to these main 4 categories, there's other products that don't really fit neatly into these categories or that are in various stages of development. So another organic that's been developed and tested in just the last few years is walnut shells. So walnut shells are the hardest nut shell on the planet and are grown here domestically. So the shells are ground up to various sizes, some of which are ideal for sports systems. Now, one of the drawbacks that's been called to attention is that there's a tree nut allergy issue in our schools. So how can we introduce a product in the field that may exaggerate that issue. And there are some processes in development that will remove that allergen and create a safe product. Also, like coconut and cork, this product degrades very slowly over time. So this product is pretty interesting. It's recycled shoe rubber, and it's also known as Nike Grind. So most of the feedstock is post-industrial, while some of it is derived from post-consumer. So there are shoe recycling facilities in both Memphis, Tennessee, and Belgium that take any type of gym shoe, separate it from the upper sole, and grind it up. So there's also a facility in Asia that processes pre-consumer rubber waste, so like, say, off-spec material that was destined for shoes. A full-size soccer field requires about 75,000 pairs of shoes. So as you might imagine, the availability of this product is pretty limited, and the manufacturing processes continually look to reduce waste. So I think over time, this product could be less and less available. And actually, there's, to my knowledge, few people that actually recycle their shoes. So for that reason, it's sometimes used in combination with crumb rubber or one of the other virgin rubber materials. The process is actually pretty cool, and there's some YouTube videos that are available online. There's a website called lessismore.org, and you can find out information about how to be one of those people that actually recycles their shoes. So coated rubber is another infill option. It coats the rubber, or it coats the SBR, or recycled crumb rubber, with a polymer that not only helps the aesthetic and gets rid of that 5 o'clock shadow, but also reduces the VOCs, which is volatile organic compounds, and the heavy metal runoff from standard crumb rubber material. And the coating on this product is also warranted for 8 years. And just to highlight, I think 8 years is the common warranty of a lot of these infills, because the turf product itself is also warranted for 8 years. And that doesn't mean that year 8 and 1 day everything falls apart, but that's the amount of time when the product is going to perform in its optimum range. So at this point, Stephen is going to help us visualize how all this infill stacks up against each other. We've gone over a lot of information, but we hope this next portion here will help boil it down to more easily understood content.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Adam. So I know we are coming up on an hour, so I'm going to move through this pretty quickly. If you do have questions, we'll circle back to them at the end. Hopefully you all are able to hang a little bit longer. But as Adam said, I'm sure everybody's heads are spinning. Obviously, there is a lot of information out there. So in an effort to simplify the analysis, or I should say the comparison of these products, we've created some basic charts using like a good, better, best, low, medium, high, et cetera type of format. So the left axis of each chart is going to match the infill tower that we sent over. So of course, EnviroFill is at the top, crumb rubber will be at the bottom, and then everything in between. So let's start with surface heat. As we know, synthetic turf can be excessively hot. Black crumb rubber absorbs the heat and is going to be the hottest infill. Cork, by itself, again, is going to be a little bit cooler. Coconut has the ability to absorb water and release moisture over the time to cool the field, making it the coolest infill. TPE, EPDM, and EnviroFill, primarily due to their color and product makeup, are going to be less hot than crumb rubber. Again, the caveat there, if it's the middle of summer, the sun's beaming down on your turf, it's going to be pretty warm regardless of the infill. Sustainability. We are defining sustainability as the endurance of the system. This includes manufacturing, transport, and end of life. So a product is going to be most sustainable if it's domestically sourced from a waste stream product and avoids the landfill at the end of life. Contrary, it's going to be the least sustainable if it's internationally sourced, a virgin product, and has to be thrown away or discarded at the end of life. So for example, crumb rubber is a waste stream product that is sourced domestically but has end-of-life challenges. TPE is a virgin material, domestically sourced, and theoretically recyclable. EPDM is a virgin material sourced domestically and discarded at the end of life. Coconut is a waste stream product to some degree that is sourced internationally and can be composted at the end of life. Cork is renewable, sourced internationally, and can be composted at the end of life as well. And finally, EnviroFill is a hybrid of virgin and waste stream products, sourced domestically, and can be reused at the end of life. Upfront cost is a consideration that I'm sure is at the top of most people's minds. You all shared that with us on one of the first polls. Crumb rubber's greatest attribute is going to be those upfront economics. It's readily available and at a low cost. Most of the alternatives are going to be comparable in terms of upfront cost. TPE and cork tend to be on the higher end. And just a point of explanation, again, this chart's going to assume that there's an addition of a shock pad for each infill.
So before you go on, Stephen, I think it's interesting. Once the owner commits to a pad, then all the infill options are kind of within the same range. It's kind of interesting. I mean, it's not like a 2X type of scenario once a pad is in the picture from the onset.
Mm-hmm. And again, at least from where we sit, we feel a pad is certainly worth the added investment. The value is there beyond just some of the safety attributes that it has. A modern system should have a synthetic turf pad. Shock absorption pad, excuse me. Life cycle cost is where we start to see some separation from one infill to the next. EnviroFill with a 16-year warranty and ease of reuse help lower these costs. Crumb rubber can be reused as well, but can incur that disposal cost that Adam referenced. He also mentioned that each turf manufacturer is going to desire a different mixture ratio of sand to rubber. But data we've collected from our sister companies suggests about 1 out of every 4 removals, they're reusing the rubber and sand mixture. Cork is going to have the most upfront cost, significant maintenance costs, and cannot be used for more than one life cycle of turf that we're aware of, making it the highest in life cycle cost. Cork-a-nut is at the higher end also for those very same reasons. TPE, EPDM cannot be reused as far as we know. Again, we'll look into the discussion around some of the TPEs. Maintenance. So I kind of alluded to this in the previous one, but this is going to vary pretty greatly from product to product. Oftentimes we see clients that are only focused on that upfront cost as maintenance is funded from, I should say, separately from capital projects. A product like Cork-a-nut, for instance, you must factor in that cost of irrigation as much as a 15% annual top-off. Cork is also going to require annual top-off due to the floating and migration characteristics. On the other hand, crumb rubber, TPE, and EPDM are all fairly low maintenance, requiring consistent grooming and refills in high-traffic areas. EnviroFill is groomed the same way as rubber and virgin rubber, the difference being that its bulk density and when paired with the right turf spec will experience far less migration and therefore require less topping off. So Adam went through each of these as well, but does it float? And we invite you all to take a pinch of each of those infills and drop it into a jar of water yourself. But you'll see that everything but cork will eventually sink. And those products that take a little bit longer, that's because of the air pockets that may be caught in it or the surface tension. Warranty, again, we got some work to do to revise this one, but EnviroFill has a product warranty of 16 years. Cork and Cork-a-nut, we're hearing, are in the 8-year range. Crumb rubber does not offer a warranty that we're aware of. EPDM and TPE are both going to be in that 8-year range as well. Fire resistance, as Adam noted, fire resistance is especially important for indoor facilities. Cork is fire resistant, as is EnviroFill. TPE and EPDM can be fire resistant with additives, while crumb rubber and Cork-a-nut are not fire resistant. For relative abrasiveness, we're looking at each product on its own, absent of turf. As you can tell by putting each of these infill in your hand, EnviroFill will be the most abrasive, and Cork-a-nut will be the least abrasive. Before moving on, I do want to point out that we do not have specific charts for UV stability, pad or no pad, or mixture, as those are pretty straightforward. All of the products are fairly UV stable. We recommend a pad in all cases, and all of the products are mixed with a sand ballast except for EnviroFill, which again is installed homogenously. All right, so that brings us to the end of the formal presentation. How about we take another quick minute? We're going to do one more poll, and then we're going to open it up for questions. So give me just a second, and I'll get this poll up and running for you. While that's doing that, we did have a question about the abrasiveness as it pertains to the turf fibers. All of these products are designed with the intent of being paired with I shouldn't say they're all designed this way, but they're designed so they do not harm the turf fibers. That abrasiveness is not such that it's going to damage the turf. All right, so you should see a two-part question here. We're asking you to think back to poll number 2. So after today's presentation, would you change the 2 infills that you initially considered? Or did we just confirm those selections for you? And if you would change your selection, which two would you choose now? All right, so we'll give you just another second to wrap up that poll. And it looks like there was quite a bit learned today. So some people said they would keep their selections, and others obviously said they'd change their consideration. So that's good. Thanks for the feedback. A few have asked along the way if we'll be making this presentation available. And we're actually presenting this again on Thursday. So if you'd like to share that with others, certainly send a link their way or ask us for a link and we can do so. If that time slot doesn't work, I believe it's at 4 o'clock on Thursday afternoon. So if that time slot doesn't work, just shoot me an email and I can make the recording available. I'll also put my email address in the chat window so you have it. All right, so let's jump back to a couple of questions that have come through. Give me just 1 second here. Do these costs include, so upfront costs include delivery and import? That's going to vary pretty greatly on where it's being shipped to, so we can't, it's really challenging to assess that particular cost. Let's see. Has EnviroFill been reused on replacement fields? So as the product supplier, we're not going to know every occurrence where that's happened. I do know it has happened before. The one that immediately jumps to mind is Tatum High School in Tatum, Texas. So if you specifically want more information on that, again, just shoot me a note and we can share more. What presentation software are we using? So we are using a product called Prezi, P-R-E-Z-I. Any analysis on Zeofill? I believe LA Parks is using that. You want to take that one, Adam?
That is a newer Infill product in the sports world. I admittedly don't know much about it, and I think the time will tell whether or not, that time will tell how that system performs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's not a lot of data that we're aware of on that. To the person that asked that question's point, it may be worth including in the other category at this point, but again, not a whole lot that we know, so we'll do some more research there. Do all turf contractors offer crumb rubber, cork, EnviroFill, etc.? That's a little bit of a tricky question to answer. So crumb rubber, yes. All of the others are certainly available. EnviroFill by design, we will work with all of the major turf manufacturers.
I think it's ultimately up to the field owner to decide what's going to best fit their situation, and hopefully their architect or engineer are guiding them through that process. And then if the turf contractor doesn't want to install that particular product, there's no commitment that they have to bid on that project.
Mm-hmm. All right, I don't see any more questions coming through, so we will stay on the line for just a couple more minutes to answer any that come through. So we do want to remind everybody that part 3 of the webinar series is coming up. The date is looking like March of 2016. So because of spring break and some things like that, we're still trying to determine the exact date, but more info to come on that. All right, thank you everyone. Again, we'll be on the line if you have any additional questions. Thanks for carving out a little over an hour to join